All right, music fans, welcome. Harmless Dave here, talking real music in real time for real people just like you and just like me. So, yesterday I did a review on the new Journey song, which is really a throwback to a pre Steve Perry journey. I think Neal Schon is making a statement saying, this is me today. This is what I want to do. I want to create music that harkens back to a time when I could just unleash my guitar upon the world. And if you know about Journey, you know their first three albums were very different leading up to the first album they did with Steve Perry called Infinity, although there were signs that the band was trying to be a little bit more pop centric in what they were doing. But you go back and listen to those albums and there are only a couple of moments where you think to yourself, okay, they're kind of trying to get on the radio, but they had built up a very large fan base. And I make the point somewhere along the line, probably 3 or 4 years ago, that Journey as a band may have been successful as a jam band type act. You know, they might have eventually gotten to the point where, you know, after many years of touring, because the jam band industry is a big deal. I mean, you'll get 10,000 people to show up at like Red Rocks for Widespread Panic. And you're thinking to yourself, who are these guys? How come they're, you know, I've never heard of them, and how come they're so popular, yada, yada, yada. Now, it would have been weird if Journey had ended up like that, but it's a possibility. For the people who love Steve Perry, all right, this is an honest to goodness critique here. And I'm saying this not to make the Steve Perry people happy. I'm saying it because it's true. You can't replace Steve Perry and Journey. You can't fully replace Steve Perry and Journey. That's the point I think I want to make today. Because I've got people saying, this song, which is called Let It Rain, this song is terrible. I mean, doesn't sound anything like the Journey I grew up listening to, okay? There are a lot of people who didn't investigate those first three albums. In fact, there was this double album, and I'm sure if you're a collector, you might be able to find it. It's called In the Beginning, I believe. And it's I want to say I don't know if it's all of the music from the first three albums, but it was a double album, you know, fold out. I mean, I'd love to have a copy of it now because I'm sure it's just worth some money and it's cool, right? But it featured all of the music from the first three albums. That was the record label kind of saying, hey, look back here. These guys have been around for a little while and they had all this music that a lot of people missed. And, you know, I understand though why people would put that on and listen to it and go, oh, this has nothing to do with the Journey I grew up listening to. You're a Steve Perry fan, and there's nothing wrong with being a Steve Perry fan, just like there's nothing wrong with being a Lou Gramm fan, right? Or a Jimmy Jamison fan, or any of the other amazing vocalists that came along and did things that vocalists today don't do because they're too reliant on technology, and everybody's trying to clean everything up, make it sound perfect. But the bottom line is you cannot replace the voice of Steve Perry. Now, I say that, though, while still acknowledging that the band has gone on and they've done great things, even though some people would say it still pales in comparison to the Steve Perry era. And again, it's kind of like apples and oranges. You cannot recreate the Steve Perry era. You just can't do it. Sorry. You know, go back and look at the footage from the Live in Houston concert. That's the year I went to go see Journey, and it was earth-shattering. It was life-changing. This was, as Neal Schon said, chemistry that was off the hook. While he was feuding with Jonathan Cain a number of years ago. He was posting a lot of very nostalgic pictures and videos of that time, almost trying to coax Steve Perry back into the band, putting out all kinds of messages. Hey, Steve, you know, I'd love to go out. Remember the coffee? It was supposed to be the coffee summit between Neal Schon and Steve Perry. Never happened. Steve Perry's done. He's done with Journey. He's not done with his own solo material. He put out music last year, the Christmas album. A lot of people were hoping that he'd have a new record coming out soon. This channel got started basically speculating about when Steve Perry was going to come out with his album Traces. Didn't know it was named Traces at the time, but I knew he was up to something. People were telling me. I don't know if those people had an inside track, but they ended up being right. It just took another year or two for that to materialize. The point I'm trying to make here for the fans of both the new updated Journey with Arnel Pineda and Arnel doing a great job out there. I know there are a lot of people that are secretly kind of disappointed that Arnel is doing. I mean, you're not going to replace Arnel, right, at this stage. The reason being is he's part of this franchise and has been there for 15 years straight, right? And he's done everything they've asked him to do. And quite honestly, if you're Jonathan Cain and you're Neal Schon, you don't want to have to compete with another ego, another strong-willed, creative person. And I'm not saying Arnel isn't creative, but he is more humble in the sense that, wow, they plucked me out of a dive bar. Now I'm in one of the greatest rock bands in history. And that should be a story people celebrate. They shouldn't be sitting there going, oh, I thought he was done. I thought, you know, I had critiqued a lot of what Arnel had done vocally over the last couple of years. And I was saying, you know, I think these guys might have a problem. Turns out that they fixed the problem. So what am I going to do? Keep going on and saying, oh, you know, Arnel, he's just, you know, he's a little better, but he's still, you know, not Steve Perry. I think Arnel knows that he's not Steve Perry. I think Jonathan Cain and Neal Schon know that he's not Steve Perry. But they are a new band. They're a different band. They don't sound just like they did, you know, 30 or 40 years ago. They sound like a band that has roots in that era and has, I hate to use this word, evolved, right? They've had an evolution and it's worked out. The fans are showing up. I mean, the tickets aren't cheap and the fans are showing up. You got Toto and Journey and they're killing it out there. You can't ask for much more than that. Steve Perry, God love him, right? He's not going to be out on tour in large arenas trying to belt out separate ways. It just isn't going to happen. So Arnel has done a fantastic job and he seems to truly enjoy what he's doing. He adds a lot of energy to their onstage presence. And everybody I talk to says he is the nicest guy on the planet, which goes a very long way for me. He's humble. He knows that he's very fortunate to be in the position that he's in. That goes a long way for me. You know what I'm saying? I mean, that can cover a multitude of other issues where you think to yourself, okay, Steve Perry would have sang it this way. Arnel is singing it this way. Arnel, for whatever reason, was probably never told, be yourself. And I think that's the motivation for a better Arnel. Don't worry about what people say about you. Stop trying to be Steve Perry. You can't be Steve Perry. Once you get over that, once you realize that, hey, I don't have to try to be this guy anymore, I can just be me, he's so much better because of that. You know, those cut and paste journalists out there who say that, you know, they found this vocal doppelganger. No, they didn't. They found a guy who sings a tenor voice, who has some similarities with Perry. But quite honestly, I think Dean Castronovo is closer to Steve Perry than Arnel is, right? But Dean does not want to be the front man of Journey. Dean will sing a song or two on drums. It'll be fantastic. It helps make the show even better. Dean went out with Journey Through Time when Neal had that band going for a brief time, and it was fantastic. And they did all of the music, by the way. They did the old stuff, the new stuff, and people showed up for it. You know, people who had a deep appreciation of the old Journey and the new Journey. And everybody was like, yeah, I want to hear all of this. And it's kind of like the old Van Halen fans and the new Van Halen fans. Count me in for that too. The Dave years, the Sammy years, it's all amazing. And we should all count ourselves blessed to have lived through that time period and to have a deep appreciation for that music. And Arnel and the current lineup keeping that alive. The new song is called Let It Rain. It's not what you would think. It's very much a throwback to the first three Journey albums. Many people don't even know those three albums exist, especially your newer, more casual fans that have just glommed on to that one download that they have in their collection along with Bohemian Rhapsody, right? And they think to themselves, what is this? You know, they're not all that interested in the first three songs that Journey has released from their forthcoming album called Freedom, which drops on July 8th. I like what I've heard so far. Is it Steve Perry-esque? No. Is it Journey? Yes. Does it have Neal Schon's fingerprints all over it? Absolutely, along with Narada Michael Walden, Jonathan Cain. Those guys put some pretty interesting music together. And I think fans of good, well put together melodic rock are going to enjoy this album when it comes out. And if you can't get over the fact that Steve Perry isn't in this, it's hard to be able to really, I don't know, bridge that gap with people. It's just about impossible, actually. And for some, they're just going to hang on to their early works, you know, the collections that they already have. And that's fine. From Infinity to Trial by Fire. And I totally get that, you know, but for living in the present and enjoying the moment and understanding that nobody can, and this is, again, nobody can replace Steve Perry. Nobody can replace Lou Gramm. Nobody can replace Jimmy Jamison. There are certain vocalists that just had something, and it was an era too where there was no auto-tune. These guys were all competing against each other. Even Steve Perry said this, and it just made them better and better as singers, because, you know, it's kind of like when the Beatles were competing against the Beach Boys, you know, and it just made both of those bands better and better. Well, a lot of singers were trying to outdo each other back in the 80s, and it made for some great music and for some incredible singing. So let's just be happy, I would say. Overall, for those who can deal with the current lineup and are interested and are fascinated, let's just be thankful. We've got some great music out there. And there's a lot of other great music that I try to talk about on this channel, from bands that are trying to continue the legacy. Bands like Cry, that's a band I had on recently. I urge people to go check them out. You can check out the interview I did with Cry. The only reason I mention that in this video is a lot of people, again, kind of like not knowing that Journey had these 3 albums at the beginning. There are a lot of people out there that they don't understand that bands from Sweden, bands from Greece, Italy, Finland, Norway, all these different places, they're putting out music like Americans made back in the 1980s. And there's a lot of good material to be heard. I know a lot of people just cling to the stuff that they already have. And again, this channel is for you too, because obviously I cover all of that stuff, but I'm trying to just put a little bug in someone's ear and say, hey, if you're tired of listening to Foreigner 4, which, it's a great album. If you're tired of listening to Foreigner 4 and you want to hear something like Foreigner would do today if Lou Gramm was at 100% strength, you should check out a band called Perfect Plan. There are bands out there that are trying to keep this going. And anyway, I will continue to keep that torch lit. For those of you who disagree with me, it's okay. It's okay to disagree. A lot of strong feelings when it comes to Mr. Steve Perry. You cannot just make a Steve Perry, right? Steve Perry was made back in the 60s while listening to Sam Cooke and then just exploding onto the scene when Journey finally made the right move and hired him, thanks to Herbie Herbert, because everybody else was like, nope, we don't want a crooner in this group. Greatest thing the band ever did, because now they have a catalog that they live off of. And some people will say that. They'll say, well, Steve Perry is helping this band even now. Well, this band is also helping Steve Perry because Steve Perry gets residual income from everything that they do. And I understand about cracking the stone and the VH1 and all that stuff. These guys wanted to continue. They wanted to earn a living. They wanted that brand name. And it stinks today because bands become brands and then everybody fights to keep the brand. I mean, Foreigner right now is mostly no original members. Mick Jones comes out for like a half hour, 20 minutes, 25 minutes, and then he goes back, because he wants to make an appearance to make it look like, hey, it's Foreigner. Is it Foreigner? I don't know. I guess it's Foreigner. I knew that would eventually happen. It's sad. And there are other bands like Chicago that have completely, turned into something very different from their original foundation. But time marches on. Mortality kind of sucks, and we all have to deal with that. So, all right, I think I clarified a bit. I can like both the Steve Perry era and the Arnel Pineda era of Journey, and honorable mentions to my buddy Jeff Scott Soto, and obviously Steve Augeri, and other people, Robert Fleischman. There are people out there that helped Journey along the way. Randy Jackson, who was supposed to be back and then decided not to. You can go back in time. George Tickner, if you know who he is. I mean, this band has had a few different people in there, and the lineup has changed over time. Steve Smith and then Dean Castronovo, and before either one of those guys, Ainsley Dunbar. So this is a great band with a great legacy, and they've truly evolved over the years. And I'm still interested in what they're up to. I'm still looking forward to their new album. It's called Freedom, comes out on July 8th. And no, they're not paying me. I wish, but they're not paying me any money to talk about their new album. Who knows how this new album will be received? I am still looking forward to it. It's the first new Journey album in 11 years. So yeah, more Journey, more Cry, more Perfect Plan, more of the entire scene, more of Find Me. I had the great Robbie LeBlanc on the show the other day, who's an insanely good singer who, as fate would have it, wouldn't become a household name, but he is to me. And more people need to learn about these amazing singers who are out there doing the Lord's work, keeping rock and roll music and melodic rock alive. All right, that's my video done. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, Patreon for just $1 a month, $2 a month, whatever you can afford. And again, I appreciate all of you patrons and all of you subscribers, and I will see you soon.